The pain hit Leona like lightning splitting through her body. She was standing in the kitchen of their Beverly Hills mansion, making herself tea at 8 months pregnant, when her legs gave out completely. The china cup crashed to the marble floor as she doubled over, clutching her swollen belly. Something was very wrong. Mrs. Hale. Rosa, their housekeeper, rushed to her side as Leona collapsed onto the cold kitchen tiles. Blood was seeping through her white cotton dress, pooling beneath her as contractions tore through her body with vicious intensity. The baby, something's wrong with the baby, Leona gasped, her vision blurring at the edges. Rosa's hands shook as she dialed 911, then immediately called Marcus Hale. The phone rang and rang while Leona writhed on the floor, her cries echoing through the empty mansion. When Marcus finally answered, loud music and laughter filled the background. He was clearly at a party. "What is it, Rosa?" "I'm in the middle of something important," Marcus said, his voice sharp with irritation. "Mr. Hale, your wife, she's bleeding badly. The ambulance is coming. You need to come home right now." Rosa's voice cracked with panic. There was a pause. In the background, Leona could hear a woman's voice calling Marcus's name, telling him to come back to the party. Her heart shattered even as her body fought for survival. "She'll be fine," Marcus said coldly. "Leona's always been dramatic. Just have someone from the staff handle it. I'll be back tomorrow." The line went dead. Rosa stared at the phone in disbelief while Leona processed what she'd just heard. Her husband of 3 years, the father of the child she was carrying, had just dismissed her medical emergency as drama. At that moment, as sirens wailed in the distance, Leona felt something inside her break that would never heal. The paramedics burst through the front doors just as Leona lost consciousness. Her last coherent thought was wondering if Marcus would even care if she died. 3 hours later, as Leona lay unconscious on the operating table fighting for her life, Marcus was posting Instagram stories from a yacht in Dubai. The glittering party was for Vanessa Klein, a 24-year-old Instagram model with platinum blonde hair and a body that had never carried a child. Marcus had flown her and 20 of her closest friends to Dubai for a week-long birthday celebration, complete with champagne fountains and a private chef. While surgeons worked desperately to stop Leona's bleeding and save their premature daughter, Marcus was captured on camera feeding birthday cake to Vanessa, his wedding ring nowhere to be seen. The photos would be splashed across gossip websites within hours, but Marcus was too drunk on expensive champagne and younger company to care about consequences. Dr. Patricia Moore, the surgeon who saved both Leona and her baby that night, would later tell colleagues that she'd never seen a woman fight so hard to live. Even unconscious, Leona's body refused to give up. It was as if she had something important left to do. The baby, born 2 months early, spent her first weeks in the NICU while Leona recovered from emergency surgery. Little Sophia weighed barely 4 pounds, but she had her mother's fighting spirit. When Leona first held her daughter, tubes and wires connecting the tiny body to life support machines, she made a promise that would change everything. "I'm going to make sure you never need anyone who doesn't value you," she whispered to Sophia's sleeping face. "We're going to be just fine on our own." Marcus didn't return from Dubai for another week. When he finally walked into the hospital room, tanned and relaxed, he acted like nothing had happened. He brought no flowers, no apology, just irritation that his vacation had been interrupted by hospital drama. "You look fine," he said, barely glancing at his daughter in the hospital bassinet. "Rosa made it sound like you were dying. Women have been giving birth for thousands of years, Leona. It's not exactly a medical miracle." Leona said nothing. She just watched her husband check his phone repeatedly, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. That's when she noticed the hickey on his neck, barely covered by his expensive cologne. Her silence wasn't shock anymore. It was calculation. That night, alone in her hospital bed while Sophia slept in the NICU, Leona opened her laptop. The internet was filled with photos and videos from Marcus's Dubai trip. There he was, kissing Vanessa Klein at sunset. There he was, dancing with her on the yacht deck. There he was, clearly having the time of his life while his wife nearly died giving birth to his child. The comments were brutal. People who had once envied Leona's fairy tale marriage were now pitying her. Poor Leona, they wrote. She deserves so much better. But pity was the last thing Leona wanted. She closed the laptop and picked up her phone. Her sister Ruby answered on the first ring. Leona? Oh my God, I saw the photos. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? We're both fine, Leona said quietly. But Ruby, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to start collecting every piece of information you can find about Marcus's business dealings. Everything. Financial records, partnership agreements, investment portfolios. All of it. Leona, what are you planning? Leona looked through the hospital window at the city lights below. Somewhere out there was the empire Marcus had built on the backs of people he considered beneath him. An empire that bore her name as co-owner, even though he'd never let her have any real power in it. I'm planning to take back everything he stole from me, Leona said. Starting with my dignity. The morning light streaming through the hospital windows felt different somehow. Leona had been in the hospital for a week now, and each day brought the same routine. Nurses checking her vitals, doctors explaining her recovery progress, and the deafening silence where Marcus should have been. He'd visited exactly twice since returning from Dubai, both times for less than 30 minutes, both times spent mostly on his phone. Sophia was finally strong enough to room with her mother. The tiny baby lay in a clear hospital bassinet next to Leona's bed, her little chest rising and falling with determined breaths. She was beautiful, with Marcus's dark hair but Leona's strong jawline. Looking at her daughter, Leona felt a fierce protection she'd never experienced before. Mrs. Hale. A young nurse named Jennifer appeared in the doorway, holding a stack of newspapers and magazines. I wasn't sure if you wanted to see these, but they're everywhere. Leona's stomach dropped. She'd been avoiding most media since the Dubai photos, but she knew this moment would come. Show me. The headlines were worse than she'd imagined. Billionaire's wife fights for life while he parties with Mistress. Marcus Hale's heartless betrayal. From hospital bed to headlines, the cruelest abandonment of the year. But it was the photos that really cut deep. There was Marcus, clearly drunk, his arm around Vanessa as she blew out birthday candles. There was another shot of them kissing on the yacht deck at sunset. And worst of all, there was a video someone had secretly recorded of Marcus on the phone, laughing as he told someone, Leona's always been needy. This baby thing is just her latest attempt to control me. The magazine had even done a timeline. While Leona was rushed into emergency surgery at 3 p.m. Pacific time, Marcus was posting champagne-soaked selfies at 11 p.m. Dubai time. While she was unconscious and bleeding, he was dancing. While their daughter fought for life in an incubator, he was living his best life with a woman 10 years younger. Ma'am, there are reporters outside, Jennifer said gently. They want a statement from you. Security is keeping them back, but... Tell them I have no comment, Leona said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. And Jennifer? Can you bring me my laptop and phone charger? I have some work to do. Jennifer nodded and left. Leona waited until she was alone, then allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to cry. She thought about the woman she'd been a week ago trusting, hopeful, still believing that Marcus's coldness was just stress from work. That woman had died on the kitchen floor. The woman lying in this hospital bed was someone entirely different. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages. Her sister Ruby had sent dozens of texts with love and support. Her college roommate Sarah had sent flowers. Even Marcus's mother had called, though Leona suspected it was more about damage control than genuine concern. But the most interesting message came from someone unexpected, James Chen, a lawyer who'd worked for Marcus's company before quitting abruptly 6 months ago. His text was simple, I saw the news. When you're ready to talk, call me. I have information you need. Leona saved his number and kept scrolling. The comments on social media were a mix of sympathy and judgment. Some people defended her, calling Marcus a monster. Others suggested she must have done something to drive him away. But the ones that hurt most were the pitying comments. Poor Leona, she must be so embarrassed. I feel so sorry for her. How humiliating. She didn't want pity. She wanted power. Ruby arrived that afternoon with a suitcase full of comfortable clothes and a laptop bag. I brought everything you asked for, she said, hugging Leona carefully. But are you sure you're strong enough for this? You just had major surgery. I'm strong enough, Leona replied, watching Sophia sleep peacefully in her bassinet. Ruby, I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person I was before this happened. I spent 3 years making myself smaller so Marcus could feel bigger. I supported his dreams while abandoning my own. I smiled at his business dinners while he treated me like arm candy. And look where it got me. Ruby sat down heavily in the visitor's chair. What do you want to do? I want to destroy him, Leona said simply. Not with violence or public drama. I want to take apart everything he's built, piece by piece, using his own weapons against him. I want him to feel as powerless as he made me feel. Leona, he's worth hundreds of millions. His company owns half the luxury hotels in California. How could you possibly, because I know things, Leona interrupted. I was married to him for 3 years. I attended every business dinner, every investor meeting, every strategy session. He used to joke that I was too soft to understand business, so he talked freely in front of me. I know which partnerships are shaky, which investors are unhappy, which deals are barely holding together. I know where all the bodies are buried. Ruby looked skeptical. But you'd need capital, connections, experience. I have experience. I have a business degree from Stanford that I never got to use because Marcus wanted a trophy wife instead of a partner. As for capital. Leona pulled out her phone and showed Ruby a bank statement. Community property laws are beautiful things. Half of everything Marcus owns is legally mine. Including voting rights in his company. Ruby's eyes widened. You're serious about this? Dead serious. Marcus thinks he can just discard me and move on to his next young model. He thinks I'll quietly disappear with some divorce settlement and never bother him again. He's about to learn that he severely underestimated the woman he married. That evening, after Ruby left and Sophia was fed and sleeping, Leona made her first call. James Chen answered immediately. I was hoping you'd call, he said. Why did you reach out to me? Because Marcus Hale destroyed my career, and I've been waiting 2 years for the right moment to return the favor. When I saw what he did to you, let's just say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. What kind of information do you have? The kind that could bring down his entire empire if it fell into the wrong hands. Or the right hands, depending on your perspective. Are you interested in meeting? Leona looked at her sleeping daughter. Very interested. But James? If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. No cutting corners, no illegal activities. I want to beat Marcus at his own game, using his own rules. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. As Leona hung up the phone, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, excitement. For the first time since collapsing on her kitchen floor, she felt like herself again. Not Marcus's wife, not a victim, not an object of pity. Just Leona, and she was about to remind the world exactly who she was. 2 weeks after Sophia's birth, Leona was finally discharged from the hospital. The media circus had died down somewhat, but photographers still waited outside the mansion gates. Marcus had been back for 3 days, but he spent most of his time in his home office taking calls or at his downtown office, handling the publicity crisis, as he put it. He hadn't held Sophia once. The nanny starts Monday, Marcus announced over breakfast, not looking up from his phone. I hired the best agency in the city. You won't have to worry about anything. Leona carefully fed Sophia her bottle, choosing her words. I want to take care of my own daughter. Don't be ridiculous. You need to focus on getting back to normal. We have the Harrison Charity Gala next month, and people will be watching to see how we handle this situation. I need you looking perfect, not exhausted from midnight feedings. The Harrison Charity Gala. An annual event where Los Angeles' wealthiest gathered to see and be seen while writing tax-deductible checks. Last year, Leona had spent weeks planning the perfect dress, the perfect jewelry, the perfect conversation topics. This year, she had different plans. Of course, she said mildly. I'll make sure everything looks perfect. Marcus finally looked up from his phone, studying her face suspiciously. You're being very understanding about all this. I'm tired, Marcus. The last few weeks have been, a lot. I just want things to be peaceful. He seemed satisfied with this explanation and returned to his phone. Leona finished feeding Sophia and excused herself to the nursery. It was a beautiful room with soft pink walls and expensive furniture that Marcus had insisted on designing himself. It looked like a magazine spread and felt just as cold. In the nursery's attached sitting room, Leona had set up what looked like a simple reading corner. Comfortable chair, side table, bookshelf filled with parenting books and novels. But hidden behind the parenting guides were folders full of documents that Ruby had been quietly collecting. Financial records, partnership agreements, employee records from Marcus's company, news articles about his business dealings. Leona had spent hours studying everything, and a clear picture was emerging. Marcus's empire looked impressive from the outside, but it was built on shaky foundations. He'd made enemies throughout his rise to power, former partners he'd cheated, employees he'd mistreated, investors he'd lied to. Most importantly, several of his biggest deals were based on relationships that were more fragile than they appeared. Her phone buzzed with a text from James Chin. Can you meet tomorrow? I have something you need to see. They'd arranged to meet at a small coffee shop in Santa Monica, far from Marcus's usual haunts. Leona told Marcus she was taking Sophia for a pediatric checkup, which was partially true. They did have an appointment, just not until later. James was already waiting when she arrived, holding Sophia's carrier while she navigated the stroller. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Not the type of person she'd imagined Marcus would hire. Thank you for meeting me, Leona said, settling Sophia's carrier next to her chair. Why did you really quit Marcus's company? James smiled grimly. I was the head of their legal compliance department. My job was to make sure all their business deals were ethical and legal. Marcus didn't appreciate my thoroughness. What do you mean? I found irregularities in several major contracts. Nothing technically illegal, but definitely unethical. When I brought my concerns to Marcus, he told me to mind my own business. When I persisted, he started freezing me out of important meetings. Finally, he fired me for not being a team player. James pulled out a thick folder. But before I left, I made copies of everything. Every questionable deal, every unhappy investor, every employee complaint that was buried. I've been waiting for the right moment to use this information. Leona opened the folder and began reading. It was worse than she'd thought. Marcus had been cutting corners for years, treating people like disposable resources, making promises he had no intention of keeping. There were documented cases of him stealing credit for other people's work, manipulating contracts to his advantage, and lying to investors about projected profits. This is incredible, Leona murmured. But how do we use it without it looking like revenge? That's the beautiful part, James said. We don't have to use it directly. This information shows us where Marcus is vulnerable. We can approach the right people, offer them better alternatives, and let Marcus's own reputation do the rest. Sophia stirred in her carrier, making soft baby sounds. Leona reached over to stroke her daughter's cheek, feeling a surge of determination. This child would grow up knowing that her mother was strong, that she didn't accept being treated badly, that she fought for what was right. "Tell me about the hotel deals," Leona said. "Which ones are most at risk?" For the next hour, James walked her through Marcus's current projects. The biggest was the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, a luxury property in downtown Los Angeles that was supposed to be his crowning achievement. But the deal was built on relationships with three key investors who were growing increasingly unhappy with Marcus's management style. If someone were to approach these investors with a better offer, a more ethical partnership. James let the sentence hang in the air. "They might be interested in switching sides," Leona finished. "But I'd need capital to make a competing offer." "Actually, you wouldn't need as much as you think. I've been researching your legal position. Under California community property law, you have rights to Marcus's assets that he probably hasn't fully considered. You could leverage those rights to secure financing." Leona felt pieces clicking into place in her mind. "I need to make some calls." Over the next week, while Marcus traveled to San Francisco for business meetings, Leona made contact with old friends and connections from her Stanford days. Many of them had gone into finance, real estate, and business development. When she explained what she was planning carefully, without revealing too much, several expressed interest in supporting a new, more ethical real estate development company. The key conversation was with Patricia Williams, her former roommate who now ran a successful investment firm focused on female entrepreneurs. "Leona, I've been reading about what happened," Patricia said during their lunch meeting. "I'm so angry I could scream. How can I help? I want to start my own real estate development company. I want to compete directly with Marcus, but I want to do it the right way. Treating employees fairly, keeping promises to investors, building something sustainable instead of just." Patricia leaned forward, interested. "What kind of capital are you thinking?" $10 million to start. I know it sounds like a lot, but I have assets I can leverage, and I have inside knowledge of Marcus's weak points. I know exactly where to hit him where it hurts. $10 million isn't that much for what you're describing. Especially if you can prove you're worth the investment. Do you have a business plan?" Leona pulled out a folder she'd been working on for days. "I want to call it Phoenix Properties. Rising from the ashes of my old life." As Patricia read through Leona's carefully crafted business plan, Leona looked out the restaurant window at the Los Angeles skyline. Somewhere in those gleaming towers was Marcus's office, where he was probably making deals and treating people badly, never imagining that his discarded wife was planning his downfall. "This is good," Patricia said finally. "Really good. You've identified clear market opportunities and you have a solid strategy for differentiation. I think we can make this work." That night, Leona sat in Sophia's nursery, feeding her daughter and making lists. She had funding interest, legal support, and inside information. What she needed now was the perfect opportunity to make her first move. Marcus had taught her to be patient, to wait for the right moment to strike. She wouldn't have to wait long. Phoenix Properties officially existed as of Friday morning, registered as a California LLC with Leona as the sole managing member. She'd spent the week setting up bank accounts, establishing business credit, and filing all the necessary paperwork. To anyone paying attention, it looked like a small startup founded by a wealthy woman with time on her hands. Nobody was paying attention yet. Marcus certainly wasn't. He'd been traveling constantly, trying to contain the damage from the Dubai scandal and keep his existing deals from falling apart. When he was home, he barely acknowledged Sophia's existence and treated Leona like expensive furniture present but not particularly important. "I'll be in New York next week," he announced over dinner. "The Peterson Group is getting cold feet about the Seattle project. I need to do some damage control." Leona knew about the Peterson Group. They were old money investors who valued reputation and stability above everything else. The scandal had made them nervous about being associated with Marcus's brand. "How long will you be gone?" she asked. "Probably 2 weeks. Maybe longer if things are worse than I thought." Marcus barely looked up from his steak. "Try not to have any medical emergencies while I'm gone." The casual cruelty of the comment took Leona's breath away. 6 weeks ago, it would have devastated her. Now, it just made her more determined. The next morning, after Marcus left for the airport, Leona put Sophia in her car seat and drove to downtown Los Angeles. She'd rented a small office space in a building 3 blocks from Marcus's headquarters. It was modest but professional, with room for growth. The sign on the door read, "Phoenix Properties Rising to New Heights." James was waiting for her with coffee and a stack of files. "Welcome to your new empire," he said with a grin. "Let's start small," Leona replied, but she was smiling too. For the first time in months, she felt truly alive. They spent the morning reviewing potential targets. James had identified 12 properties currently in development or negotiation that could be vulnerable to competition. The key was to approach the right people with better offers, more money, better terms, more ethical business practices. "The Westside Gardens project is perfect," James said, spreading architectural plans across Leona's new desk. "Marcus has been trying to secure it for 6 months, but the current owners are unhappy with his development plans. They want affordable housing mixed with luxury units. Marcus wants to bulldoze everything and build pure luxury." Leona studied the plans. Westside Gardens was a beautiful property with potential for mixed-income housing that could actually help the community instead of just displacing long-time residents. It was exactly the kind of project that could establish Phoenix Properties as a company with values. What would it take to outbid Marcus? Not as much as you'd think. The owners care more about the development vision than the money. If you could show them a plan that respects the community while still being profitable. "I can do that." Leona felt excitement building in her chest. "But I'll need architects, contractors, community liaisons. I'll need a whole team." "I've been making a list," James said, pulling out another folder. "Former Marcus Hale employees who quit or were fired for refusing to compromise their principles. Good people who would love a chance to work for someone who shares their values." The list was longer than Leona had expected. Marcus's reputation for burning through talented employees was apparently well-deserved. There were architects, project managers, financial analysts, even a few former executives who'd left to start their own smaller firms. "Start making calls," Leona said. "Tell them we're building something different. Something better." Over the next week, while Marcus was in New York trying to save his reputation, Leona built her team. She hired Sarah Kim, a brilliant architect who'd quit Marcus's company after he rejected her innovative affordable housing designs. She brought on Robert Martinez, a project manager who'd been fired for refusing to cut safety corners on a construction site. She recruited Lisa Chen, James's former colleague in legal compliance, who'd left the company after being told to stop being such a perfectionist about contracts. Each person she hired had a story about being mistreated or undervalued by Marcus. Each person was hungry to prove that business could be both profitable and ethical. By Friday, Phoenix Properties had a full team working out of their modest office, planning their first major move. The move came sooner than expected. On Saturday morning, Leona received a call from Patricia Williams. "Leona, you need to see the news. Marcus just lost the Peterson Group. They pulled out of the Seattle project and they're publicly citing concerns about leadership and company values." Leona turned on the financial news and watched Marcus's stock price drop in real time. The Peterson Group's withdrawal had triggered a panic among other investors. By the time the markets closed, Marcus's company had lost $30 million in value. Her phone rang immediately. It was Marcus, calling from New York. "Did you see the news?" he demanded, his voice tight with stress. "I saw it." "I'm sorry, Marcus. That must be very difficult." Peterson is telling people they can't be associated with our brand right now. 20 years of business relationships, destroyed by one stupid vacation. There was a pause. Look, I know I haven't been available lately. When I get back, maybe we should talk about doing some joint appearances. Show the world that our marriage is solid. Leona almost laughed. Even now, Marcus only thought of her as a prop in his performance. We can discuss it when you get home. After she hung up, Leona called Sarah Kim. How quickly can you put together a development proposal for Westside Gardens? If I work all weekend. Monday morning. Do it. And Sarah? Make it amazing. Make it the kind of project that shows the world what ethical development looks like. On Sunday evening, Leona sat in Sophia's nursery, feeding her daughter while reviewing Sarah's proposal. It was beautiful, a mixed-income community that preserved the neighborhood's character while adding modern amenities. Affordable housing integrated seamlessly with market-rate units. Green spaces, community centers, local business opportunities. It was everything Marcus's proposal wasn't. Sophia finished her bottle and looked up at her mother with alert, dark eyes. She was growing stronger every day, more alert, more present. Soon she'd be able to hold her head up on her own, to reach for things, to smile. Your daddy thinks women are decoration, Leona whispered to her daughter. But you're going to grow up knowing that women are forces of nature. You're going to watch your mother build an empire, and you're going to know that you can build anything you set your mind to. Sophia made a soft cooing sound, as if she understood. Leona kissed her daughter's forehead and made a mental note to add childcare benefits to Phoenix Properties' employee package. She was building a company that would work for everyone, including working mothers. On Monday morning, Leona called the owners of Westside Gardens and requested a meeting. By Wednesday, she was sitting in their conference room, presenting Phoenix Properties' vision for their community. This is exactly what we hoped someone would propose, said Mrs. Rodriguez, the lead owner. Mr. Hale's plans showed no respect for our current residents or the community's history. Your proposal shows you understand what we're trying to preserve. When can you start? Asked Mr. Thompson, her partner. Leona smiled. Immediately. The call came on a Thursday morning while Marcus was still in New York, desperately trying to salvage his reputation with East Coast investors. Leona was in her Phoenix Properties office, reviewing contractor bids for the Westside Gardens project when her phone rang. Mrs. Hale. This is David Kim from the Los Angeles Business Journal. I wanted to get your comment on your new real estate venture before we publish our story. Leona's stomach dropped. She'd been careful to keep Phoenix Properties under the radar until they had their first success to announce. What story? We've received information that you've launched a competing real estate company and secured the Westside Gardens development that your husband has been pursuing for months. Our sources say you outbid Hale Properties by offering a more community-focused development plan. Someone had leaked the story. Leona's mind raced through possibilities. Had one of the Westside Gardens owners talked to the press? One of her new employees? Or had Marcus's people been watching her more carefully than she'd realized? I can confirm that Phoenix Properties has secured the Westside Gardens project, Leona said carefully. We're committed to ethical development that serves communities rather than just profits. And how does your husband feel about his wife competing directly against his business? You'd have to ask him that yourself. The story hit the Business Journal's website that afternoon and was picked up by major news outlets within hours. Billionaire's wife launches rival company, steals major deal. The narrative was irresistible, the scorned wife getting revenge through business competition. Leona's phone exploded with interview requests, but she ignored them all. She had work to do. Marcus called 30 minutes after the story broke. What the hell do you think you're doing? He shouted before she could even say hello. Building a business, Leona replied calmly. She was in her office, bouncing Sophia gently while reviewing architectural plans. Her daughter was becoming an excellent business companion. You stole Westside Gardens from me. I made a better offer that better served the community's needs. That's how business works, Marcus. You taught me that. This is ridiculous, Leona. You don't know anything about real estate development. You're going to embarrass yourself and make me look like an idiot in the process. I have a business degree from Stanford and 3 years of watching you work. I think I'll manage. There was a long pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice was different, calculating instead of angry. What do you want? Money? A bigger divorce settlement? Just tell me what this is really about. It's about building something meaningful. Something I can be proud of. Cut the noble act. Everything I built for us. For our family. You're destroying that. No, Marcus. You destroyed it when you chose a yacht party over your wife's medical emergency. I'm just building something new from the pieces. Marcus hung up without another word. Within hours, the story had evolved. Social media was buzzing with commentary about the real estate revenge and whether Leona was justified in competing against her husband. Financial blogs were analyzing Phoenix Properties' chances of success. Entertainment news shows were breathlessly reporting on the billionaire couple's business war. But the most important reaction came from an unexpected source. Leona received a call from Elena Vasquez, a senior partner at Vasquez and Associates, one of Los Angeles's most respected development firms. Mrs. Hale, I've been watching your work on Westside Gardens with great interest, Elena said. My firm has been looking for partners who share our commitment to sustainable and community-focused development. Would you be interested in discussing some larger opportunities? Leona felt her heart race. Elena Vasquez was legendary in Los Angeles real estate, a woman who'd built a multi-billion-dollar company while maintaining impeccable ethical standards. An alliance with her firm would give Phoenix Properties credibility and resources that Marcus couldn't compete with. I'd be very interested in that conversation. They met the next morning at Elena's Beverly Hills office. Leona arranged for childcare, her first time leaving Sofia with someone else, and dressed in her most professional suit. She needed to be taken seriously. Elena's office was impressive but understated, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and walls lined with awards for community development projects. Elena herself was in her 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. I've been following your husband's career for years, Elena said without preamble. He's talented, I'll give him that. But he's also ruthless in ways that make good business partners nervous. When I heard you'd started your own firm with a focus on ethical development, I was intrigued. What did you have in mind? I have 3 major projects in development that need partners with fresh perspectives and community connections. The kind of projects that could establish Phoenix Properties as a major player overnight. Elena slid a folder across her desk. But I need to know you're serious about this. That it's not just revenge against your husband. Leona opened the folder and felt her breath catch. The projects were massive: a mixed-use development in Santa Monica, affordable housing in East Los Angeles, a sustainable office complex in Pasadena. Any one of them would be worth more than Marcus's entire current portfolio. Mrs. Vasquez, I understand why you'd have concerns about my motivations. But I need you to understand something: this isn't about hurting Marcus. It's about building something better. My daughter is going to grow up watching her mother work, and I want her to see that business can be a force for good. Elena studied her for a long moment. Call me Elena. And show me what you do with the Santa Monica project. For the next 2 hours, Leona presented her vision for community-integrated development. She'd done her homework, studying Elena's previous projects and understanding what made them successful. By the time she finished, Elena was smiling. You're hired as my development partner on all 3 projects, Elena said. 60-40 split, with Phoenix Properties handling community outreach and sustainable design elements. We'll announce the partnership next week. Leona drove home in a daze. In one morning, Phoenix Properties had gone from a startup with one small project to a major player in Los Angeles real estate. Marcus would lose his mind when he found out. He found out sooner than expected. Leona was barely through the front door when her phone rang. Elena Vasquez. Marcus's voice was tight with controlled fury. You went to Elena Vasquez. News travels fast. Leona, you have no idea what you're doing. Elena Vasquez doesn't take on unknown partners. If she's working with you, it's because she wants to hurt me, not because she believes in your business skills. Maybe she just recognizes good ideas when she sees them. This is insane. You're going to destroy both our reputations with this amateur hour revenge fantasy. Leona walked into the nursery where Sophia was napping peacefully in her crib. Her daughter looked so serene, so trusting. This little girl would never wonder if her mother was strong enough to protect her. Marcus, I need you to listen to me carefully, Leona said, her voice quiet but firm. I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm trying to build something meaningful. But if you keep treating me like I'm some kind of decoration in your life, if you keep dismissing me as amateur hour, then we're going to have a problem. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know things about your business that could cause you real trouble if they became public. I know about the corner cutting on the Portland project. I know about the promises you made to investors that you never kept. I know about the employees you cheated out of bonuses. There was dead silence on the line. I don't want to use that information, Leona continued. I'd rather compete with you fairly and win on merit. But if you try to sabotage Phoenix Properties or interfere with my partnerships, I'll stop being so considerate about your reputation. Marcus's voice was barely controlled when he finally spoke. I'll be back tomorrow. We need to talk. We do, Leona agreed. But Marcus? Come back ready to treat me as an equal, not as your property. Those days are over. That evening, Leona sat in her office at Phoenix Properties, working late while Sophia slept in a portable crib nearby. The space was quiet except for the soft sounds of her daughter's breathing and the distant hum of downtown Los Angeles traffic. James knocked on her door frame. I heard about the Vasquez partnership. Congratulations. Thank you. But James, I need you to prepare for war. Marcus is coming back tomorrow, and he's not going to take this lying down. What do you need? Everything. Financial records, employee testimonials, documentation of every questionable deal Marcus has ever made. If he tries to destroy Phoenix Properties, I want to be ready to defend us. James nodded grimly. I'll have everything organized by morning. As James left, Leona picked up Sophia, who had started to stir. Her daughter's eyes opened slowly, focusing on her mother's face with increasing recognition. At 2 months old, Sophia was beginning to smile, to respond to voices, to show her personality. Your daddy's coming home tomorrow, Leona whispered to her daughter. And he's going to learn that your mama isn't the same woman he left behind. Sophia made a soft cooing sound and reached up with tiny fingers toward Leona's face. In that moment, Leona felt a surge of fierce determination. She wasn't just building Phoenix Properties for herself anymore. She was building it for Sophia, to show her daughter what was possible when women refused to be diminished. The first strike had been successful. But Leona knew the real battle was just beginning. Marcus returned from New York on a red-eye flight, arriving home at dawn with the kind of barely controlled fury that Leona remembered from their early marriage. Back then, she would have spent the morning walking on eggshells, trying to improve his mood. Now, she was feeding Sophia breakfast and reviewing architectural plans when he stormed into the kitchen. We need to talk. Now, too, Leona said calmly, not looking up from Sophia's bottle. How was your flight? Don't play games with me, Leona. The Elena Vasquez partnership is all over the business news. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've secured 3 major development projects for my company. I'd say that's a pretty good week's work. Marcus sat down heavily across from her, and for the first time since his return, Leona really looked at him. He looked exhausted, older somehow. The Dubai scandal and the Peterson Group withdrawal had clearly taken their toll. Leona, I'm going to ask you one more time. What do you want? If this is about getting my attention, you've got it. If it's about money, we can work something out. Just stop this insanity before you destroy everything we've built. Leona finished feeding Sophia and gently placed her in the bouncy seat before responding. What we built, Marcus. When exactly did we build anything together? You built a business while I played the perfect wife. You made decisions while I smiled and looked pretty at dinner parties. You had affairs while I pretended not to notice. What part of that was we? I gave you everything. This house, your car, your clothes, your lifestyle. Everything you have because of me. And there it is, Leona said quietly. That's exactly the problem. You think I'm something you own instead of someone you chose to marry. You think my value comes from what you give me instead of what I am. Marcus leaned forward, his voice taking on the persuasive tone he used in business negotiations. Look, I know I haven't been the best husband lately. The business has been stressful, and I've been making mistakes. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, take a vacation, start over. Start over. Leona stood up, lifting Sophia from her seat. Marcus, 2 months ago I nearly died giving birth to your daughter while you were kissing another woman on a yacht. You told our housekeeper to have the staff handle it when I was bleeding on our kitchen floor. There's no starting over from that. That was. I was drunk, I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking perfectly clearly. You were thinking about what you wanted, like always. And what you wanted was not to be bothered by your pregnant wife having a medical emergency. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was different. What if I fire her? Vanessa. What if I end it completely and publicly apologize? Leona felt something that might have been pity. Marcus, you still don't understand. This isn't about Vanessa. This is about the fact that you're capable of having a Vanessa. It's about the fact that when your wife needed you most, you chose someone else. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. So what, you're just going to compete against me forever? Turn our marriage into some kind of business war? I'm going to build a successful company and raise our daughter to be strong. If that happens to compete with your business, so be it. Marcus's phone buzzed with what sounded like an urgent text. He glanced at it and his face went pale. Shit. The Meridian Group wants to meet about the downtown project. They're getting nervous about associating with our brand. Then you'd better go handle that, Leona said. I have a conference call with Elena's team in an hour. As Marcus hurried out of the kitchen, Leona felt a moment of genuine sadness. There had been good times in their marriage, moments when she genuinely believed they were partners. But those moments had been built on her making herself smaller, and she couldn't do that anymore. Her phone rang. It was Elena Vasquez. Leona, I hope you're prepared for some pushback. Marcus has been calling my other business partners, trying to poison them against working with Phoenix Properties. What's he saying? That you're unstable, that this is a revenge scheme that will blow up and damage everyone involved. He's also suggesting that I'm only working with you to hurt him, not because I believe in your abilities. Leona felt anger flare in her chest. And what are you telling them? The truth. That I've seen your work, I've evaluated your team, and I believe Phoenix Properties is going to be a major force in ethical development. But Leona, you need to understand Marcus has relationships throughout this industry that go back decades. He's going to use every one of them to try to isolate you. Then I need to build relationships too. Exactly. And I have some ideas about that. They spent the next hour strategizing. Elena suggested that Leona attend the upcoming California Sustainable Development Conference, where she could meet other developers, investors, and community leaders who shared Phoenix Properties' values. She also recommended joining the Women in Real Estate Association and the Latino Business Council. The key is to show people that you're serious about this long term, Elena explained. Marcus wants everyone to think you're just a scorned wife acting out. You need to prove that you're a businesswoman with vision and staying power. After the call, Leona spent the afternoon making contact with organizations and scheduling meetings. By evening, she had commitments to attend 3 major industry events over the next month and had set up meetings with 5 potential investors who specialized in sustainable development. She was reviewing her calendar when Ruby called. I saw the news about the Elena Vasquez partnership. Leona, this is amazing. But are you sure you're ready for this level of attention? I don't have a choice anymore. Marcus is trying to sabotage Phoenix Properties by telling everyone I'm unstable. I need to get out there and show people who I really am. What can I do to help? Actually, I have an idea. You work in public relations, right? What would it cost to hire a really good PR firm to help manage Phoenix Properties' image? For you? Nothing. I'm taking a leave of absence from my job to come work for Phoenix Properties as your head of communications. That is, if you'll have me. Leona felt tears prick her eyes. Ruby, you can't give up your career for me. I'm not giving it up. I'm changing direction. Leona, what you're doing is inspiring. You're showing women everywhere that they don't have to accept being treated badly. I want to be part of that. By the end of the week, Phoenix Properties had grown from a small startup to a company with real momentum. Ruby had joined as head of communications and had already scheduled interviews with 3 major business publications. James had brought on 2 more lawyers to handle the increasing contract workload. Sarah Kim had hired 3 additional architects to help with the Elena Vasquez projects. Most importantly, Leona had received calls from 4 more potential business partners, all women who had heard about Phoenix Properties and wanted to explore collaboration opportunities. The word is spreading, James told her during their Friday morning staff meeting. People are talking about Phoenix Properties as a company that does business differently. Ethically, sustainably, with respect for communities and employees. That's exactly what we want, Leona said. Sophia was in her arms, alert and content during the meeting. But I need everyone to understand this is going to get harder before it gets easier. Marcus isn't going to give up, and he has more resources than we do. What he doesn't have is what we have, Ruby pointed out. A clear mission, a great reputation, and people who actually want to work here. I've been talking to former Hale Properties employees all week. Marcus has a reputation for being impossible to work for. People are excited about alternatives. That evening, Leona was working late in her home office when Marcus appeared in the doorway. He looked different, defeated in a way she'd never seen before. The Meridian Group pulled out, he said quietly. $25 million project, gone. Leona looked up from her laptop. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Because it seems like everyone in this city is talking about how Marcus Hale is losing deals to his own wife. Marcus, I'm not trying to destroy your business. I'm trying to build mine. He sat down in the chair across from her desk. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices. But Leona, we used to be a team. We used to support each other. We were never a team, Leona said gently. I was your support system. There's a difference. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. What if we could be a real team now? What if Phoenix Properties and Hale Properties partnered on some projects? We could be the most powerful development couple in Los Angeles. Leona studied her husband's face. He looked sincere, almost vulnerable. But she'd seen this expression before whenever Marcus wanted something he couldn't get through force or manipulation. That's an interesting idea, she said carefully. But I'd need to see some changes first. What kind of changes? Public acknowledgement of your mistakes. Real apologies to the people you've hurt. A commitment to ethical business practices going forward. And Marcus, complete honesty about your personal life. No more affairs, no more lies, no more treating me like property. Marcus nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely. Whatever it takes. But as he left her office, Leona noticed he didn't mention Vanessa at all. And his phone had been buzzing with texts throughout their conversation, texts he'd been careful to keep hidden from her view. Some things, it seemed, hadn't changed at all. The California Sustainable Development Conference was held at a luxury hotel in San Francisco, and Leona arrived with Sophia, Ruby, and a carefully planned strategy. Word about Phoenix Properties had spread through the industry, and her first day was packed with meetings and networking opportunities. Remember, Ruby coached her as they prepared in their hotel suite, "You're not Marcus Hale's estranged wife. You're Leona Hale, CEO of Phoenix Properties, successful businesswoman and mother. Own that identity." Leona looked at herself in the mirror. She was wearing a sharp navy suit that projected confidence without being flashy, and she'd had her hair styled in a sleek bob that felt professional but approachable. Sophia was with the nanny they'd hired for the trip, giving Leona freedom to focus on business. The first day exceeded all expectations. Leona gave a presentation about community integrated development that received a standing ovation. She had productive meetings with 6 potential investors and signed a letter of intent with a sustainable materials company for all future Phoenix Properties projects. But the most important conversation happened over lunch with Maria Santos, CEO of Santos Construction, one of the largest woman-owned construction companies in California. "I've been watching your work," Maria said. "The Westside Gardens project is impressive, but what really interests me is your partnership with Elena Vasquez. She doesn't work with people unless they're the real deal." "I'm trying to prove that business can be both profitable and ethical," Leona replied. "It shouldn't be a radical concept, but apparently it is. It's radical because most developers prioritize profit over everything else. Including your husband." Leona set down her fork. "What do you mean?" "I worked on 3 projects with Hale Properties over the years. Every single time, Marcus tried to cut corners that would have compromised worker safety or building quality. When I refused, he tried to sue me for breach of contract. Cost me 2 years and hundreds of thousands in legal fees to prove I was right. I had no idea. There are a lot of us out there, contractors, suppliers, even investors, who have been burned by Marcus's methods. We've been waiting for an alternative." Maria leaned forward. "What if I told you that Santos Construction was ready to offer Phoenix Properties exclusive partnership terms? Better prices, faster timelines, guaranteed quality work." "I'd say that sounds too good to be true." "It's not. It's business women supporting business women. And it's payback for the way your husband has treated people in this industry." By the time Leona returned to Los Angeles, Phoenix Properties had secured partnerships with 3 major suppliers, 2 construction companies, and a green technology firm. More importantly, she'd connected with a network of female business owners who were tired of dealing with Marcus's aggressive tactics. Marcus was waiting for her at home, and he did not look happy. "Successful trip?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Very successful. Phoenix Properties is going to have a busy year. I heard about your new partnerships. Leona, you're making enemies of people I've worked with for years. I'm offering people alternatives to working with someone who treats them badly. If that makes me your enemy, maybe the problem isn't me." Marcus followed her into the kitchen where she was preparing Sophia's bottle. "Maria Santos called me today. She said Santos Construction is dropping Hale Properties as a preferred vendor." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" "Because it seems like every partnership you make costs me a relationship." Leona turned to face him fully. "Marcus, Maria Santos told me about the lawsuits, the corner cutting, the way you tried to force her to compromise worker safety. Did you think those relationships would last forever? Business is competitive, Leona. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. Hard choices like putting workers at risk to save money. Like cheating suppliers out of fair payment. Like lying to investors about project timelines. Marcus's face flushed. Where are you getting this information? From the people you hurt. And there are a lot of them. Their conversation was interrupted by Marcus's phone ringing. He glanced at the caller ID and his expression changed. I have to take this, he said, stepping out of the kitchen. Leona could hear him talking in the next room, his voice getting increasingly agitated. When he returned, he looked shaken. The Henderson Group is pulling out of the Phoenix project, he said quietly. That's $50 million in development funding, gone. What reason did they give? They said they're concerned about recent negative publicity and prefer to work with more stable partners. Marcus sat down heavily at the kitchen island. Leona, my company is falling apart. 20 years of building relationships, and now everyone's treating me like I have the plague. For a moment, Leona felt genuine sympathy for her husband. Whatever his faults, she knew how much his business meant to him. But then she remembered the housekeeper's panicked voice on the phone, the photos of him kissing Vanessa while she lay unconscious in surgery, and the callous way he dismissed her medical emergency. Maybe this is an opportunity, she said carefully. Maybe you can rebuild with a focus on doing things the right way. Easy for you to say. You're building your reputation while mine burns to the ground. Marcus, your reputation problems aren't my fault. They're the result of years of treating people badly. So what am I supposed to do? Just watch you take over the industry while I lose everything? Before Leona could answer, her own phone rang. It was Elena Vasquez. Leona, I have news. The Harrison Foundation wants to meet with Phoenix Properties about developing their new community center project. It's a $100 million development that could house affordable housing, healthcare facilities, and educational programs. Leona felt her heart racing. The Harrison Foundation was one of the most prestigious charitable organizations in California. A partnership with them would establish Phoenix Properties as a major player overnight. When do they want to meet? Tomorrow, if possible. They're specifically interested in your community-focused approach. After Leona hung up, Marcus was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. The Harrison Foundation, he said quietly. They want to discuss a community development project. I've been trying to get a meeting with the Harrison Foundation for 3 years. They wouldn't even return my phone calls. Maybe they like Phoenix Properties' approach better. Marcus stood up abruptly. This is insane. 6 months ago, you didn't even have a job. Now you're meeting with organizations that won't give me the time of day. 6 months ago, I was focused on being your wife instead of being myself. And look how that's working out for our marriage. Leona looked at her husband, really looked at him. He seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the losses his company was experiencing. But underneath the frustration, she could see something else, fear. Marcus was afraid of losing control, afraid of being overshadowed, afraid of facing the consequences of his choices. Marcus, our marriage ended the night you chose a party over my medical emergency. Everything that's happened since then is just the aftermath. So that's it? You're just going to divorce me and take half of everything I built? I don't want half of what you built, Leona said quietly. I want to build something of my own. Something I can be proud of. Something Sophia can be proud of. As if summoned by her name, Sophia began crying from her bassinet in the living room. Leona went to comfort her daughter, leaving Marcus alone in the kitchen with his failures and his fear. The next morning, Leona met with the Harrison Foundation representatives at Phoenix Properties' downtown office. The meeting went better than she'd dared hope. Not only did they approve Phoenix Properties for the community center project, but they also asked her to consider 3 additional developments in underserved communities throughout Los Angeles. Your approach aligns perfectly with our foundation's values, explained Dr. Patricia Harrison, the foundation's director. We've been looking for a development partner who understands that housing is about more than just buildings, it's about creating communities where people can thrive. By the time the meeting ended, Phoenix Properties had secured 4 major projects worth over $200 million in total development value. Leona's company had gone from startup to major player in less than 6 months. But as she celebrated with her team that afternoon, Leona couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus wouldn't take this news quietly. She'd won battle after battle, but the war was far from over. The call came at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. Leona was working late in her home office, Sophia sleeping peacefully in her portable crib nearby, when James's panicked voice came through her phone. "Leona, you need to see this. Marcus just filed a lawsuit claiming that Phoenix Properties was built using stolen intellectual property and confidential information from Hale Properties. He's seeking an injunction to shut us down immediately." Leona felt the blood drain from her face. "What kind of confidential information?" "He's claiming you had access to proprietary development strategies, client lists, and business methodologies through your marriage. He says Phoenix Properties is essentially a clone company built on stolen trade secrets. That's ridiculous. Everything we've done has been original work." "I know that, but Marcus has expensive lawyers and he's playing dirty. There's more, Leona. He's also filed for emergency custody of Sophia, claiming you're an unfit mother who's putting business ambitions ahead of your child's welfare." Leona's legs went weak. She sank into her desk chair, looking at her sleeping daughter. "He filed both lawsuits tonight, probably hoping to catch us off guard. There's a hearing scheduled for Friday morning on the injunction. If he wins, Phoenix Properties will be shut down until the intellectual property case is resolved, which could take months." After James hung up, Leona sat in the darkness of her office, trying to process what was happening. Marcus wasn't just trying to compete with her, he was trying to destroy her completely. The custody claim was particularly cruel. Sophia had never been healthier or happier, and Leona had been an exemplary mother while building her business. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus: "This didn't have to happen. It's not too late to work together instead of against each other." Leona deleted the message without responding. She had work to do. The next morning, Leona met with her legal team James, Lisa Chen, and 2 additional lawyers they'd brought in for the litigation. The conference room at Phoenix Properties was tense as they reviewed Marcus's claims. "The intellectual property argument is weak," Lisa explained. "Being married to someone doesn't give you access to their trade secrets, and everything Phoenix Properties has done has been documented as original work. The problem is that fighting this will be expensive and time-consuming." "What about the custody filing?" Leona asked. "Even weaker. You have documentation of excellent childcare, pediatric records showing Sophia is thriving, and witnesses who can testify to your parenting abilities. But again, it's designed to distract you and drain your resources." James leaned forward. "Leona, I think it's time to use the information we've been holding back. Marcus's own business practices provide plenty of ammunition for counterattacks." "What do you mean?" "We file our own lawsuit. Fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, misrepresentation to investors. We have documentation of all of it. We make Marcus fight on 2 fronts instead of just attacking you." Leona considered this. She'd hoped to build Phoenix Properties without having to destroy Marcus, but he'd made that impossible. "Do it. But I want everything we file to be absolutely true and well documented. I won't win by lying, even if he will." The rest of the week was a blur of legal preparation and media management. Ruby worked overtime to control the narrative, emphasizing Phoenix Properties' community focus and Leona's role as a dedicated mother and businesswoman. But the gossip media had a field day with the billionaire couple's legal war and the custody battle. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching Leona's mood as she walked into the Los Angeles County Superior Court. Marcus was already there with his legal team, looking confident and well-rested. He barely glanced at her as she took her seat across the courtroom aisle. Judge Sandra Mitchell was known for her no-nonsense approach to complex business litigation. She reviewed the case files with obvious impatience before addressing both legal teams. "This appears to be a family dispute that spilled over into business litigation," she said dryly. "Mr. Hale, you're claiming that your wife's company was built on stolen intellectual property. Ms. Hale, you're claiming that your husband's business practices constitute fraud. Meanwhile, there's a child custody dispute that probably belongs in family court. Can someone explain to me why this belongs in my courtroom?" Marcus's lead attorney, Richard Stone, stood up. "Your Honor, Phoenix Properties has systematically targeted Hale Properties clients and business partners using confidential information that Mrs. Hale obtained through her marriage. This is a clear case of industrial espionage." Judge Mitchell looked skeptical. "Industrial espionage? Through marriage? Mr. Stone, are you suggesting that spouses can never work in the same industry? When one spouse uses confidential information to deliberately sabotage the other's business, yes, Your Honor." Lisa Chen stood to respond. "Your Honor, Phoenix Properties has succeeded because it offers clients something Hale Properties doesn't: ethical business practices and community-focused development. Every project we've won has been won on merit, not insider information. Furthermore," Lisa continued, "we have evidence that Mr. Hale's claims are part of a pattern of retaliatory behavior designed to punish Mrs. Hale for refusing to reconcile their marriage." Judge Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "What kind of evidence?" Lisa presented a folder of documents. Text messages threatening to destroy Phoenix Properties if Mrs. Hale didn't shut it down. Business partner testimonials about Mr. Hale's attempts to sabotage our contracts. And Your Honor, we have our own complaint to file. The countersuit was devastating. James and Lisa had assembled 2 years' worth of documentation showing Marcus's questionable business practices, the safety violations, the misleading investor projections, the employee complaints that were buried, the supplier payments that were delayed without cause. But the most damaging evidence was a recorded phone call from 6 months ago, when Marcus had called a building inspector and offered a consulting fee to overlook some code violations on a downtown project. The inspector had reported the attempted bribe, and the city had quietly investigated and fined Hale Properties. Judge Mitchell reviewed the evidence in silence for several long minutes. When she finally looked up, her expression was grave. "Mr. Stone, your client's intellectual property claims appear to be without merit. More concerning is the evidence suggesting that Mr. Hale has engaged in practices that may violate state and federal business regulations." Marcus's confidence was visibly shaking. He whispered urgently to his lawyer, who stood up quickly. "Your Honor, these allegations are unsubstantiated and, Mr. Stone, I'm looking at a recorded phone call and city investigation records. These don't appear unsubstantiated to me." Judge Mitchell turned to Lisa Chen. "Ms. Chen, I'm denying the injunction against Phoenix Properties. However, I'm ordering a full investigation into the business practices of both companies." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough. Phoenix Properties would remain operational while the legal battles continued. Marcus, on the other hand, now faced potential criminal charges for the attempted bribery. As they left the courthouse, Marcus caught up with Leona in the parking garage. "Are you happy now?" he demanded. "You've destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything, Marcus. I just stopped letting you destroy me. This isn't over. I'll fight the custody case. I'll appeal the business decision. You'll what?" Leona turned to face him fully. "You'll continue making the same mistakes that got you into this mess. Marcus, you had a choice. You could have supported my business, celebrated my success, been proud of what I was building. Instead, you tried to tear it down because you couldn't handle not being the only successful person in our marriage." Marcus's phone buzzed with what sounded like urgent notifications. He glanced at it and his face went pale. "What now?" Leona asked, despite herself. The story just broke. The attempted bribery investigation, the court hearing, all of it. It's on every business news website in the country. Leona felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Maybe now you'll understand what it felt like to see your private humiliation splashed across the internet. As she walked away, leaving Marcus standing alone in the parking garage, Leona felt something she hadn't experienced in months: peace. Not happiness exactly, but the calm that comes from knowing you fought for what's right and won. But as she drove back to Phoenix Properties, where her team was waiting to celebrate their legal victory, Leona knew the real battle was just beginning. Marcus would never voluntarily accept defeat, and there were still months of litigation ahead. The difference was that now she was fighting from a position of strength. Phoenix Properties was thriving, her reputation was solid, and she had allies throughout the industry. Most importantly, she had Sophia, who was growing stronger and more beautiful every day. That evening, as she sat in Sophia's nursery feeding her daughter and planning Phoenix Properties' next moves, Leona realized something profound: she was no longer fighting against Marcus. She was fighting for herself, for her daughter, and for the future she was determined to build. And for the first time since this whole ordeal began, she was absolutely certain she was going to win. The criminal investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks of the court hearing, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office had opened a formal investigation into Marcus's business practices. The attempted bribery case was just the beginning. Investigators had uncovered a pattern of corruption that stretched back years. Leona learned about the latest developments not from Marcus, but from the morning news. She was feeding Sophia breakfast when the story broke on Channel 7, local billionaire under criminal investigation for business fraud. The reporter stood outside Hale Properties' downtown headquarters, which was now surrounded by news vans and federal investigators. Marcus Hale, once considered one of Los Angeles's most successful real estate developers, is now facing potential federal charges for wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit bribery. Sophia gurgled happily in her high chair, oblivious to the fact that her father's empire was crumbling on live television. Leona stroked her daughter's soft hair and felt a complex mix of emotions. There was satisfaction, yes, but also a deep sadness for the man Marcus could have been if he'd chosen differently. Her phone rang constantly throughout the morning: reporters wanting statements, business partners checking on Phoenix Properties' stability, friends offering support. But the most important call came from Elena Vasquez. "Leona, I need you to know that the criminal investigation won't affect our partnerships," Elena said immediately. "Phoenix Properties has been completely above board. If anything, this validates our decision to work with you instead of Marcus." "Thank you, Elena. I was worried about guilt by association. The opposite is true. The business community is impressed by how you've handled this situation. You've competed fairly, maintained your ethics, and built something genuinely valuable. In fact, I have 3 more potential partners who want to meet with Phoenix Properties next week." By noon, Phoenix Properties offices were buzzing with activity. The phones hadn't stopped ringing with new business inquiries. Apparently, Marcus's downfall was creating opportunities throughout the Los Angeles real estate market. Companies that had been locked out of deals by his aggressive tactics were now looking for new partnerships. James appeared in Leona's office doorway with a stack of contracts. "We've received 5 new project proposals just this morning. 2 from developers who used to work exclusively with Marcus, 3 from community organizations that had given up on finding ethical development partners." "This feels almost too easy," Leona said, bouncing Sophia gently while reviewing the proposals. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Maybe sometimes the good guys actually win," Ruby suggested from her desk, where she was fielding media calls. "The LA Times wants to do a feature story about Phoenix Properties. They're calling it Building Something Better: How One Woman's Ethical Approach is Changing Real Estate." Leona's assistant knocked on the door. "Mrs. Hale. There's a Vanessa Klein here to see you. She says it's urgent." Leona felt her stomach drop. Vanessa Klein, Marcus's mistress from Dubai. What could she possibly want? Send her in. Vanessa looked nothing like the glamorous woman from the Instagram photos. She was clearly distressed, her makeup smudged, her designer clothes wrinkled. She couldn't have been more than 25, and standing in Leona's office, she looked very young and very scared. Mrs. Hale, I know you have no reason to help me, but I didn't know where else to go. What do you want, Vanessa? Marcus, he's lost his mind. When the investigation started, he became paranoid, erratic. He's been calling me constantly, asking me to lie to investigators, to say that you were the one who suggested the bribery schemes. Leona felt cold anger wash over her. And what did you tell him? I told him no. I don't know anything about his business, and I'm not going to lie for him. Vanessa's voice cracked. But he's threatening me now. He says if I don't help him, he'll destroy my reputation, make sure I never work in this city again. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what he's planning. And because. Vanessa looked down at her hands. Because I'm sorry. I knew he was married. I knew about the baby. I should never have gotten involved with him. Leona studied the young woman across from her. Vanessa was clearly genuinely distressed, and her apology seemed sincere. But Leona felt no satisfaction in seeing her husband's mistress brought low. Vanessa, you made poor choices, but Marcus is the one who was married. The blame isn't all yours. Leona leaned forward. But if he's threatening you, you need to tell the investigators. That's witness intimidation, which is another federal crime. I'm scared. Marcus knows a lot of powerful people. Marcus's powerful friends are abandoning him as fast as they can. His threats are empty now. But if you help the investigation, they can protect you. After Vanessa left, Leona sat alone with Sophia, trying to process everything that was happening. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, "We need to talk. This has gone too far." She deleted the message without responding. That evening, Leona was working late at the Phoenix Properties office when security called to tell her Marcus was in the lobby, demanding to see her. She almost told them to have him escorted out, but something made her agree to the meeting. Marcus looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "Leona, you have to help me," he said without preamble. "The investigators are trying to make me a scapegoat for the entire industry's problems." "Are you guilty of what they're investigating?" Marcus slumped into the chair across from her desk. "Some of it. Maybe most of it. But everyone does business this way, Leona. The bribes, the corner cutting, the creative accounting, it's standard practice. It's not standard practice for Phoenix Properties. Because you're naive. You think you can build a successful business by playing by the rules, but the rules are rigged. You have to bend them to compete." Leona looked at her husband, really looked at him. This broken, desperate man bore little resemblance to the confident billionaire she'd married. Success built on corruption had always been fragile, and now it was collapsing entirely. "Marcus, I built Phoenix Properties from nothing to $100 million company in 6 months, and I did it without breaking a single law or hurting a single person. Maybe the problem isn't the rules. Maybe the problem is that you never learned how to succeed within them. So that's it. You're just going to let me burn. I'm not letting you do anything. You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences. That's how accountability works." Marcus's phone buzzed with yet another urgent call. He glanced at it and his shoulders sagged further. "That's my lawyer. They want me to come in for more questioning." As he stood to leave, Marcus looked back at Leona one more time. "I loved you, you know. In my own way, I did love you." "I know," Leona said quietly. "But love isn't enough when it's not backed up by respect. And Marcus, you never respected me. Not really. After he left, Leona sat in the quiet of her office, holding Sophia and watching the city lights twinkle outside her window. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something meaningful. But tonight, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, complete peace with her choices. 3 days later, Marcus was arrested at his downtown office on federal charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, and tax evasion. The story dominated the business news cycle for weeks. Hale Properties stock became worthless overnight. Several of Marcus's business partners were also arrested as the investigation widened. But the most significant development came a week after the arrest. Leona received a call from the court-appointed receiver who was managing Hale Properties' assets. "Mrs. Hale, we're liquidating your husband's company to pay creditors and legal fees. However, one property isn't part of the criminal enterprise, the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. It was purchased with clean funds and could be sold separately." Leona felt her heart race. The Grand Metropolitan was Marcus's crown jewel, the luxury hotel he'd spent 2 years developing. It was also the perfect flagship property for Phoenix Properties' expansion into hospitality. What would it take to purchase it? The asking price is $50 million, but given the circumstances, the court might accept a lower offer from a qualified buyer. Especially one with a clean reputation. That afternoon, Leona stood in the empty lobby of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel with Elena Vasquez, Sarah Kim, and James. The property was stunning: 40 floors of luxury suites, restaurants, conference facilities, and retail space in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. "It's perfect," Sarah said, already envisioning the renovations that would make it truly special. "We could turn this into a model of sustainable luxury hospitality." "The symbolism is powerful too," Elena pointed out. Phoenix Properties rising from the ashes of Hale Properties. Taking Marcus's greatest achievement and making it better. Leona walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably in a jail cell, finally facing the consequences of a lifetime of poor choices. She should feel triumphant, but instead she felt something more complex: sadness for what could have been, relief that the battle was over, and excitement for what came next. "Make the offer," she told James. $40 million. Let's bring the Grand Metropolitan into the Phoenix Properties family." 6 months later, Marcus was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. The judge noted that his cooperation with investigators had earned him a reduced sentence, but emphasized that white-collar crime carried real consequences. Vanessa Klein had testified against him in exchange for immunity, providing crucial evidence about his attempts at witness intimidation. Leona watched the sentencing on the news from her new office in the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Phoenix Properties now occupied 3 floors of what had once been Marcus's headquarters, and they were expanding rapidly. The custody case had been quietly dropped even though Marcus's lawyers had admitted that Leona was an exemplary mother. As the news coverage ended, Leona turned back to her work. Tomorrow, Phoenix Properties was breaking ground on their largest project yet, a sustainable mixed-income community that would house 2,000 families while creating hundreds of local jobs. It was exactly the kind of project Marcus would have dismissed as bleeding heart nonsense, exactly the kind of project that made Leona proud to get up in the morning. Sophia, now 8 months old and crawling everywhere, played happily in the corner of the office while Leona worked. Her daughter would grow up seeing her mother as a force for positive change in the world, never doubting that women could build empires while maintaining their values. The revenge was complete, but it had never really been about revenge. It had been about rising. 5 years later, Leona stood on the rooftop terrace of the Phoenix Properties headquarters, watching the sunset paint the Los Angeles skyline in shades of gold and rose. The city spread out below her looked different now, dotted with Phoenix Properties developments that had transformed neighborhoods while respecting their character. Affordable housing mixed seamlessly with market-rate units. Green spaces provided gathering places for communities. Local businesses thrived in ground-floor retail spaces designed to support entrepreneurs rather than chain stores. "Mama, look!" Sophia's voice called from the playground area Leona had built on the rooftop. At 5 years old, Sophia was confident, curious, and completely unaware that her mother was one of the most powerful women in Los Angeles real estate. To her, Leona was just Mama, the person who read bedtime stories, kissed scraped knees, and occasionally brought her to work when childcare plans fell through. "What is it, sweetheart?" Leona walked over to where Sophia was showing off her monkey bar skills to several other children whose parents worked in the building. "I made it all the way across without falling." Sophia beamed with pride. "I'm so proud of you. You kept trying even when it was hard." It was a lesson Leona tried to reinforce whenever possible, that persistence and integrity mattered more than natural talent or easy victories. Sophia would grow up knowing that her mother had built an empire through hard work and ethical business practices, not through cutting corners or stepping on other people. "Mrs. Hale." Ruby appeared on the terrace, now Phoenix Properties chief communications officer and Leona's closest friend. "The Times reporter is here for your interview." The Los Angeles Times was doing a 5-year retrospective on the rise and fall of Marcus Hale, examining how his corruption had been exposed and how Phoenix Properties had emerged as the city's leading ethical development company. It would be Leona's first extended interview about the whole ordeal since the initial media attention died down. "Give me 10 minutes, Leona said, watching Sophia navigate the monkey bars with determination that reminded her so much of herself. The interview took place in Leona's office, which occupied the same floor where Marcus had once held court as the king of Los Angeles real estate. But where his office had been all glass and steel designed to intimidate, Leona's space was warm and welcoming. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided natural light, plants added life and color, and the walls were covered with photos from Phoenix Properties community projects rather than awards and ego displays. Looking back, the reporter asked, "Do you ever regret how everything unfolded? Some people say you could have handled your husband's infidelity privately instead of competing against him professionally." Leona considered the question carefully. "I think those people misunderstand what really happened. This was never about revenge or punishing Marcus for his personal failures. It was about refusing to accept being diminished. When someone treats you like you're disposable, you have two choices: accept that treatment or prove them wrong. I chose to prove them wrong. Your husband was released from federal prison 6 months ago. Have you had any contact with him? Marcus sends birthday cards to Sophia and occasionally requests visits, which I allow if Sophia wants to see him. He's her father, and I believe children should have relationships with both parents when it's safe and healthy." What Leona didn't mention was that Marcus looked like a different person now. Prison had humbled him in ways that losing his business never could. He was working as a construction supervisor for a small company, living in a modest apartment, and seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding his life on more honest foundations. He'd written her a letter after his release, not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation, but simply acknowledging that he understood now how badly he treated her and expressing hope that Sophia would grow up proud of her mother. Leona had kept the letter, not out of sentiment, but because it represented something important: people could change, even if it took losing everything to motivate that change. "What's next for Phoenix Properties?" the reporter asked. "We're expanding nationally. We have projects starting in San Francisco, Portland, and Denver. The demand for ethical development has grown beyond what any of us expected." Leona smiled. It turns out that treating people fairly and building sustainable communities isn't just the right thing to do, it's also good business. After the interview, Leona returned to the rooftop terrace where Sophia was now playing with blocks in the early evening light. The routine was important to both of them. Work ended when Sophia needed attention, and nothing was more important than being a present, engaged mother. "How was your day, little one?" Leona asked, settling onto the cushioned play area. "Good. I helped Mr. James with his computer," Sophia said proudly. James Chen, now Phoenix Properties chief operating officer, had a soft spot for Sophia and often let her help with simple tasks when she visited the office. "That was very kind of you. What should we do for dinner? Can we go to Maria's restaurant?" Maria Santos had opened a small cafe on the ground floor of one of Phoenix Properties' mixed-use developments. It served food from her grandmother's recipes and had become a neighborhood gathering place. Sophia loved the children's menu and the way Maria always remembered her favorite juice. As they walked through the lobby of their building, Leona reflected on how different her life was now compared to 5 years ago. Then, she'd been living in a mansion that felt like a museum, married to a man who saw her as decoration, spending her days in activities that felt meaningless. Now, she lived in a beautiful but modest condo near Sophia's school, spent her days building communities and creating opportunities for others, and felt genuinely proud of the life she'd created. The revenge had been complete, but the real victory was simpler: she'd become the person she was meant to be. At Maria's restaurant, they sat at their usual table by the window. Sophia chattered about her day at kindergarten while Leona answered emails on her phone. It was a perfect balance: professional success and personal fulfillment, ambitious goals and present moment awareness. "Mama," Sophia said suddenly, "why don't I have a daddy who lives with us like Emma does?" It was a question Leona had been expecting but dreading. How do you explain adult complications to a 5-year-old without damaging her relationship with her father or making her feel responsible for problems she didn't create? "Sometimes grown-ups make choices that mean they can't live together anymore," Leona said carefully. "Your daddy and I decided we would both be happier living separately. But that doesn't change how much we both love you. Will you ever live with a daddy again?" The question caught Leona off guard. She'd been so focused on building Phoenix Properties and raising Sophia that she'd barely thought about romantic relationships. A few men had asked her out over the years, but she'd always found excuses to decline. The truth was, she'd grown to love her independence and wasn't sure she wanted to share her life with anyone who might expect her to make herself smaller again. "Maybe someday," she said honestly. "If I met someone who understood that you and I are a team, and who wanted to support our dreams instead of asking us to change them." As if summoned by their conversation, a familiar voice called Leona's name. She looked up to see Dr. Michael Torres, Sophia's pediatrician, approaching their table with a takeout bag. "Leona. Sophia. How are my 2 favorite patients?" Sophia lit up. "Dr. Mike. Mama, can Dr. Mike sit with us?" Michael looked at Leona questioningly. "If you don't mind the company. Please, join us." Michael was in his late 30s, a widowed father whose son attended the same school as Sophia. Their paths had crossed frequently over the years: school events, medical appointments, neighborhood activities. He was kind, intelligent, and had built his medical practice around serving underserved communities. Most importantly, he treated Sophia like a complete person rather than a cute accessory, and he'd never once suggested that Leona's business success was somehow unfeminine or inappropriate. "How's the hospital expansion project going?" Michael asked. Phoenix Properties was developing a new wing for the community hospital where Michael worked, designed to provide better pediatric care for low-income families. "Construction starts next month. It should be completed by next spring. That's going to make such a difference for families in this neighborhood. My colleagues are all excited about the new facilities." As they talked, Leona found herself noticing things about Michael she'd somehow missed before. The way he listened to Sophia's stories with genuine interest. The way he spoke about his patients with compassion and respect. The way he looked at Leona not as Marcus had, like a possession to be displayed, but as a person to be known and understood. "Mama," Sophia said as they walked home later, "I like Dr. Mike. He's nice to you." "He is nice," Leona agreed. "He's a good friend." "Could he be more than a friend?" Out of the mouths of babes. Leona looked down at her daughter, wondering when 5-year-olds had gotten so perceptive. "Why do you ask?" "Because he looks at you the way Prince Eric looks at Ariel in the movie. Like he thinks you're the most beautiful person in the world." That night, after Sophia was asleep, Leona stood on the balcony of their condo looking out at the city lights. Phoenix Properties buildings glowed throughout the skyline, each one representing families housed, communities strengthened, dreams realized. She'd built something meaningful and lasting, something that made the world a little bit better. But Sophia's questions had stirred something in her that she'd kept carefully buried. Maybe it was time to consider whether there was room in her carefully constructed life for someone who could add to it rather than diminish it. Someone who saw her strength as attractive rather than threatening. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael, "Thank you for letting me join you for dinner. Sophia is lucky to have such an amazing mother. Would you like to have coffee sometime? Just the two of us." Leona stared at the message for a long time before responding, "I'd like that." "When?" The coffee date led to dinner dates, which led to family outings where Michael's son Diego and Sophia became fast friends. Slowly, carefully, Leona allowed someone new into the life she'd built. Michael understood that Phoenix Properties wasn't just her job, it was her calling. He celebrated her successes instead of feeling threatened by them. Most importantly, he loved Sophia as if she were his own daughter and never tried to replace her father or diminish Marcus's role in her life. 2 years later, on a perfect spring morning, Leona stood in the garden behind their new house, a beautiful but modest home near Sophia's school where they'd blended their families. Michael was making breakfast while Sophia and Diego argued good-naturedly about weekend plans. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely wonderful. Phoenix Properties had gone national, with offices in 12 cities and a reputation as the gold standard for ethical development. Leona had written a book about building businesses with values, which had become a bestseller and made her a sought-after speaker at business conferences. Most importantly, she'd created thousands of jobs and housed tens of thousands of families while proving that doing good and doing well weren't mutually exclusive. Sophia, now 7 years old, was confident, kind, and completely secure in her mother's love. She visited Marcus regularly. He'd become a devoted if imperfect father who was genuinely committed to making amends for his past mistakes. She adored Michael and Diego, and had seamlessly adapted to their blended family. "Mama," Sophia called from the kitchen, "Dr. Mike wants to know if you want pancakes or waffles." "Surprise me," Leona called back, smiling at the beautiful ordinariness of the decision. As she walked back toward the house, Leona reflected on the journey that had brought her here. It had started with the most devastating betrayal imaginable, a husband who chose a party over his wife's medical emergency. It had continued through months of legal battles, business competition, and personal transformation. But it had ended here. With a successful business that made the world better, a daughter who would grow up knowing that women could be powerful and kind simultaneously, and a love that enhanced rather than diminished her sense of self. The revenge had been complete. But the real victory was simpler and more profound: she'd learned to rise. And as Sophia's laughter echoed from the kitchen, mixing with Diego's and Michael's voices, Leona knew that the best parts of her story were still being written. The end.